This is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
And welcome to The Drive. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And it is a blustery Monday here.
Yeah, it was a windy walk in here.
Well, it's always a windy walk here, but it was windy everywhere else around here today as well. I don't know what's blowing up from where, but
it's just marching in the Berg, I assume.
It
right?
is marching into the Berg, and we are marching. Well, it's March 24th, so we're getting closer and closer
like
to
30
April.
days away, something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah, draft is right around the corner.
Right around the corner.
Which means there's this lull before the storm, too.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. So I did a little research over the weekend, and somebody did some research as well on in the comments section on YouTube and looking into what we talked about early last week.
Yeah, this is interesting to me.
With how difficult it is to replace a true Hall of Fame franchise legend quarterback. And so I looked up, the guy either has to be in the Hall of Fame already or is going to be in the Hall of Fame. So like Breeze and Brady qualify.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't do like Eli Manning.
Well, he didn't get in first try, so that's not a slam dunk, right?
I also went 2000 and on, basically.
Okay,
because,
we're not going Bart Starr and Bradshaw.
Yeah, and I did that because, for example, when the 49ers moved on from
Montana,
from Joe Montana.
Sure, they won.
It was pre-free agency.
Yeah.
And so Steve Young was on their roster, and he wasn't
there, right?
He wasn't going anywhere. You could sit on Steve Young for 5 years if you wanted to.
I mean, to their credit, though, they sent the Bucks the first-round pick, with the foresight to think that through. But that's obviously a really weird situation, too. And you probably couldn't sit.
You couldn't do that today.
They'd both be $50 million players.
Yeah, you just couldn't. You just couldn't do it in today's game.
I was just say free agency might be my line of demarcation too.
I looked at it that way, and I thought, that's.
I forget what year it started.
93.
Okay.
My first year covering the league was the first year of true free agency.
Okay.
So I looked at the Broncos post John Elway.
And they even had a guy in place. They had Maddox.
Well, they had moved on from Tommy Maddox because Elway wouldn't talk to him.
Okay, Maddox was drafted when Elway retired. Maddox wasn't there to take it over.
The replacement was Brian Greasy.
Okay, second-round pick though. I'm just trying to think how these teams prepared. At least they had the idea in mind with the Maddox pick.
Now remember, they won two back-to-back Super Bowls with Elway,
and he wasn't. I think he's one of the most underrated players in NFL history, not because of those two, because he went to 3 with – I bet these two younger pups couldn't name you a whole lot of Broncos on that Elway team.
Yeah.
People are like, the 3 Amigos. I'm like, well, name the 3 Amigos. They're not the 3 Amigos if it's not for Elway. There's like Carl Mecklenburg, but they're not loaded with Hall of Famers.
Sure, it was Martin Short.
Dancing, singing Bush. And, right.
So 6-10. 11-5, 8-8.
So he left a good team, though.
He left a good
real good team.
A
Davis,
Super Bowl team.
Shanahan, who should be in the Hall of Fame.
And Shanahan was still the head coach.
Right.
6-10, 11-5, 8-8. So 25-23 with Brian Greasy as your quarterback.
And he wasn't a terrible player.
Yeah.
He wasn't Elway, but
Miami post Marino. This actually looks pretty good, but
I'm trying to think what those teams look like.
11-5, 11-5, 9-7. That was coming off the Jimmy Johnson years.
Ooh, okay. So Johnson and Marino overlapped. That wasn't a Shula retire.
Johnson basically retired when left when Marino retired. Maybe smartly.
Might have something to do with
because this was Dave Wanstad at this point. So 11-5, 11-5, 9-7.
Okay.
They did win a playoff game. They went 31-17, won a playoff game. Jay Fiedler, their quarterback.
Who was the starter here?
Jay Fiedler.
Mitchell had got traded.
Beat the Colts in overtime in 2000.
Wow.
They haven't won a playoff game since.
I'm going to say it hasn't been good since. Right. I mean,
they have not won a playoff game since 2000. We're talking about the Miami freaking Dolphins.
Yeah. Their search for the next Marino is still ongoing, though.
Miami Dolphins. This is one of the corners. The Broncos and Dolphins. If you're looking at the hierarchy of the AFC, the Steelers, Broncos, and Dolphins and Raiders were the the four
they were in it every year,
cornerstones.
right? Even before Elway.
Yeah.
Before Marino. Right.
They were the four cornerstones of the AFC for a long, long, long time.
Yeah. That's a good point. And Denver and Miami have not had a lot of playoff success lately, to say the least.
The 49ers post Steve Young.
Okay.
Now remember, I couldn't go with Montana because he was basically
really a strange situation on that one.
So they went 6-10, 12-4, 10-6.
Okay.
So they went 28-20. They did have a playoff win. They beat the Giants 39-38 in 2001, but then went 9 consecutive seasons without a winning record.
I said, then there's a lot of barren time.
Without a winning record.
Yeah.
Almost a decade.
I'm sure you're way more tuned into this, but I mean, like Miami's a good example, or Elway's a real good example of these guys retire kind of on top when they have a pretty good team, or they wouldn't have come back for the last year if they didn't have a pretty good team.
Right.
So maybe caretaker quarterback wins you 10 games the next year, and then the bottom falls out.
And the bottom falls out.
Yeah, and then there's no one waiting in wings.
Dallas after Troy Aikman.
I bet this is bad.
5-11, 5-11, 10-6, 20-28 with no playoff wins. They did have the one appearance when they went 10-6, but they didn't win a game.
And their playoff success since isn't good.
Not great. Yeah.
Right. Who was that quarterback? Walsh wasn't still there.
You're talking about Quincy Wilson.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, there was a myriad of guys in there. Right. I mean, they were running everybody and anybody out there.
That's a team too that has not used high picks on quarterbacks since Aikman at all.
Yeah.
You know.
Brett Favre in Green Bay.
Well, he hands us to Rodgers.
6-10 the first season.
Really?
After going 13-3 in Favre's last year.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a good team.
Yeah.
And they went 6-10, then 11-5, lost to the Colts or the Cardinals in the wild card game, 51-45. You remember that game?
Yeah. Wow.
And then went 10-6 and won the Super Bowl.
Okay. But Rodgers was not an instant success.
No, he was 6-10.
Yeah, I mean, as first-year starter guy, he was first-round pick waiting in the wings, but he wasn't like MVP
People
Rodgers
were like,
right off the bat,
did they make the right decision?
Yeah, right. Okay, interesting.
The Cardinals post Kurt Warner. Remember,
this can't be good.
He had 4 starting seasons there. He took him to a Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was Pro Bowler like every year.
Yeah.
He was a really good player for them. I don't think he goes to the Hall of Fame without the Cardinal part.
Right, yeah. That was the part to put him over the top. 5-11, 8-8, 5-11. 18-30 with no playoff.
I just know the Larry Fitzgerald
quarterbacks. The quarterbacks are Kevin Cobb and
Skelton, and I mean, it's really bad for a long stretch, basically until Kyler.
And the reason I only did 3 seasons with these guys is because it's been 3 years since Ben.
Oh, okay.
The Steelers have had 3 years.
Yeah, you have 3 years to go off of.
The Broncos post Peyton Manning. I didn't include the Colts post Manning because if you remember, his last year there
was a really weird one.
He didn't play at all.
He was, for people that don't remember, I don't know if he was injured in week 1 or in the offseason.
I think it was the offseason. It was elbow.
Because he had a neck.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was.
And he didn't play.
They thought his career might be over.
Yeah, he didn't play it down that year.
And to show how bad they were without him, they earned the first overall pick.
They get the first overall pick and got lucky.
They were horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, without Manning.
So I didn't include that in it because really
But realistically, you should include that season, which was like
horrendous.
1 win or 2 wins or whatever.
Yeah.
It was first pick of the draft bad.
So the Broncos post Manning, and again, they had just won the Super Bowl.
Okay.
They had one of the best defenses in the league.
No, they had great defense.
Yeah.
I mean, Manning did not win them the Super Bowl. It was the defense.
It was the defense.
Von Miller and
9-7, 5-11, 6-10.
Wow.
20-28. Last year was that was in 2015 that he retired. Last year was their first playoff appearance.
I was to say they had the
since
longest
Manning
stretch,
retired.
I think, going playoffless seasons, right?
The Saints post Drew Brees. They were 12-4 in his last season.
Okay.
Won a playoff game. I think they won a playoff game. 9-8, 7-10, 9-8, 25-26. No playoff appearances.
Wow. And really maxed out their. I mean, they're a weird build too. Like they maxed their credit cards out then, but then kept trying to keep winning, and it slowly just down the toilet.
The Patriots post Brady.
This is bad.
7-9, 10-7, 8-9. Remember, I only did 3 years. The last the last couple years have been really bad.
Bad.
Your 7-9, 10-7, 8-9 are with the guy that everybody says is the greatest coach of all time.
Mm-hmm.
of all time.
Right.
And you had two losing
and they were really
teams.
good teams, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a defense.
Again, they went 12-4 Brady's last year.
I say Belichick's last 2 years, I thought they would have correlated with that. Must not have. Were real bad. I mean, Belichick's last 2 years were horrible.
25-25, no playoff wins. They did make one playoff appearance in Mac Jones' rookie year.
Okay. Yeah, he was kind of a hot commodity there for a while. For one season.
The Bucs post Brady. Now that's only been 2 seasons, but they've gone 9-8 and 10-7, 19-15. They did win a playoff game. They beat the shell of the Eagles last year.
Yeah. But they've been good.
They've been good.
I'm impressed with that organization.
Again, 9-8 and 10-7.
Right.
The Steelers post Ben. 9-8, 10-7, 10-7, 29-22, 2 playoff appearances. Again, no wins.
We know that, right?
We know that.
Right.
We're well aware. But
it stacks up as well as any of the others.
29-22 in the 3 years without your franchise quarterback. And, by the way, you've started, 5 different guys?
I know you didn't do Eli, but I bet they're like 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins. I mean, they were miserable even at the end and haven't been good since. Matt Ryan's been bad.
The funny thing was looking at some of the guys that some of these teams turned to.
Oh, that's got to be
the Quincy
hilarious.
Carters and the
Yeah.
I mean,
it's. Yeah, I mean, not many of them went to Russell Wilson or brand name guys, let alone had a real good succession plan in place either.
It's hard.
It's real hard, right?
And this is what
they want to hold on to the end of the Breeze. I mean, I can't harp on it enough. I mean, the last time the Saints used a first-round pick on a quarterback was Archie Manning.
Yeah. So the 2001 Cowboys.
They go a long stretch without taking quarterbacks, too.
They started 4 different guys at quarterback that year, the year after Aikman.
And they still had Irvin and Emmett and
Quincy Carter.
A really tough offensive line. And, that was still a good team.
Quincy Carter, Anthony Wright, Ryan Leaf, Clint Stoner.
Nice.
They all started at least 2 games that year.
Wow. Ryan Leaf. Man.
The next season in 2002 was Chad Hutchinson and Quincy Carter. Okay. So they had drafted Hutchinson, but he was like a 28-year-old rookie.
Yeah, he was a very overaged rookie.
Yeah. And then the following season, it was Quincy Carter the whole way.
Quincy Carter was a second-round pick that they kind of had hope for.
Yeah. 17 touchdown passes, 21 interceptions.
I urge people to go check out the Falcons after they drafted Matt Ryan and the Cowboys after they drafted Aikman, the quarterbacks they invested in for 15 years. There's none. I mean, until they get the Penix in Atlanta, it's like a 7th-round throwaway pick. It's nothing. Dallas is kind of the same way. I mean, just totally ignored the position.
And I get it. I mean, you're trying to win and win as many games as possible while you have your franchise guy.
Right. And some of the logic is, if our guy gets hurt, it's the Manning Colts. If our guy gets hurt, we're going to be terrible anyways.
Yeah.
There is no
and it
backup.
Just so happened for the Colts, it worked. It actually worked out semi-well for them, not in the long run, but Manning went down in the year. You happen to have a generational talent.
Right. That anyone would have picked Luck.
If that had happened the previous year, that was the 2012 draft.
Is that like the E.J. Manuel's the first guy off the board draft? And then you're picking first without a quarterback.
Picking first, and there's no quarterback worth taking.
You may end up with Luck again the next year.
Yeah.
Because you're been so bad. Wow. And again, those were good teams. They still had Harrison and Wayne and Edge.
Right.
And
Gonzalez Hall of Famers all over the place.
Tarek Glenn, Saturday. I mean, they were pretty well in place.
But so when people talk about the Steelers, A, having no succession plan in place, B, they're in a quarterback wasteland right now, welcome to the club.
Yeah. I mean, you had it really good for a while.
This is what it's like when you don't have that guy and you keep trying to get that guy until you get one.
I mean, it's just kind of how the world works. It's how sports works. If the Chiefs start to fall off a cliff, no one's going to cry for the Chiefs.
No.
When the Patriots fell off a cliff, no one's boo-hooing about that.
Mahomes, he's 30 now, right?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah. He could decide, let's say he plays 2 more years.
Maybe he does the Andrew Luck thing and says, I've done enough.
Yeah, I've done enough.
Right.
I got a bunch of young kids at home now. I just want to go do that. I've got plenty of money in the bank.
Oh, yeah. He can do whatever he wants, right.
I'm good.
It's probably going to go bad.
It's going to go bad.
It's going to go real bad.
Yeah. Maybe he decides when Andy Reid's retires, I'm done. I don't want to play for another coach.
I can't talk enough about the Luck situation, too. I don't know if Luck would have ended up in the Hall of Fame, but I do believe
he was on that trajectory.
He really was. Yeah. When the day he retired, he was a top 3 quarterback. I mean, he was behind Brady maybe, and he was not Mahomes, but I mean, it'd be like if Burrow retired today. And he retired like not even this time of year. It was after the draft. And they've been pretty bad since. You know, I mean, they've been searching like crazy. Matt Ryan and Rivers and now Richardson. I mean, like, you talk about retreads and not having a plan. How could you have a plan?
Yeah. The one thing that the Steelers haven't done yet, and I say yet, yes, they drafted Kenny Pickett, but he was the 20th pick in the draft.
That's different than...
They didn't go up and get a top 10. They didn't trade up to go get Anthony Richardson.
We love this dude. We're going to put all of our eggs in that basket. Yeah. Right,
They weren't the 49ers and said, we're going to trade up and go get Trey Lance.
Right.
And then Brock Purdy falls into their lap. Like, they haven't taken that swing at this yet.
No, and I don't think it'll happen this year.
No.
Who knows about a year from now? I mean, I don't think it's something they're against.
No, I don't. No, they're certainly not against it.
Right.
And I think that's why when we talk about the compensatory picks that they've collected this offseason,
they can be real useful.
Doesn't mean that you have to use them necessarily next year.
And I'm sure that there's quarterbacks that they really liked that didn't turn out to be great ones. But I know for a fact, and you know for a fact, they were really high on Mahomes. They were really high on Lamar. But
they liked Dak Prescott the year he came out and had meetings with him. And looked at him, okay, he's a third-round guy. And then he gets a DUI, right before everything happens, and you bump him down around, and the Cowboys take him instead.
Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff, too. So I don't know that that's didn't have a plan.
You can love a guy in the draft.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you can get him.
The Packers' approach is just so weird. Like, the Colts Manning the Luck thing fell in their lap. That's Tim Duncan falling to you whenever you
it took a catastrophic injury.
It took a catastrophic injury, right, where Rodgers, and we talked about this last week, I don't think they had any intentions of taking Rodgers. He was just sitting there in the green room forever, and it's like, we didn't plan on going quarterback here. They didn't trade up for him, you know?
So I in that regard, I do get the Steelers taking swings with the guys that they're taking swings with. All right, you bring in Russell Wilson. You drafted Kenny Pickett. That didn't work out. You bring in Russell Wilson last year, future Hall of Fame guy, and say, okay, let's see what this looks like. Maybe you didn't like it. There were maybe personality clashes.
There
whatever.
weren't tons of options
that's
last
the other
year
thing.
or this year, right?
If you decide, okay, we're going to try this.
There's not a Rolodex of, we'll just call it Mahomes. We'll call it out. You know, right. I mean,
we're going to try this approach this year. We're going to sign Aaron Rodgers and see what that looks like.
So an example I wanted to bring up, too, is Stafford. Not him necessarily going from Detroit. That was kind of a win-win for everybody. But I have a lot of respect for the Rams organization. I think McVay is one of the absolute best coaches in the league. I think they're heads above the rest of their division right now after Devontae Adams. But they have no plan in place at all for life after Stafford.
No.
And they're not going to take one in the first round this year. Or, I mean, like, when he retires, everyone's going to be like, well, they had no plan in play. I mean, they've ignored it completely. And there's a lot of teams like that, you know, and I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Well, it's hard with the way the contracts are now structured for these young guys.
You don't know how much longer he's going to play.
Look at the situation that the Packers had with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Jordan Love sat behind Aaron Rodgers his first 2 years. They then decide to move on from Rodgers and trade him to New York. Well, now you're putting it.
I mean, you can't pick up his fifth-year option if he's never played.
You're putting Love in there, and you're saying, okay, they had to give him basically a new contract.
Yeah. And they didn't. They did. I mean, that was a really weird conversation too, because we're going to extend you, give out a contract that really doesn't exist in the league, but you've never played ever.
We've seen you in the preseason.
And in
that's
practice,
it.
Right. And we know Aaron's getting older.
One game against Kansas City that wasn't great.
Right. It wasn't great, right. And it's worked out for the most part. I think they made the right choice, and they got picks for Rodgers, too. They didn't just let him walk for nothing. But that was put up or shut up now. If you draft one in the first round, you can't just sit around.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it sounds weird, but what if the Steelers would have taken Lamar or Mahomes? They'd have been sitting around a long time. Doesn't matter how good they are. They're not going to beat out Ben.
Yeah.
You know?
And people need to understand that the Steelers weren't going to trade Ben unless Ben wanted to go.
Sure.
You know, if Ben had decided, like, I want to go play my last year wherever, But the thing was, he's coming off an elbow injury.
Yeah, in the elbow injury, right? Which happens to older players,
if
too.
If he didn't have the elbow injury and after the 2020 season says, well, I want to go play somewhere else, okay, he's got value. Maybe you could trade him.
It's like a Rodgers trade, deal. To the Jets, right?
But coming off that, the elbow injury, you're not going to trade Ben Roethlisberger for a 5th-round pick.
Right. That doesn't make you better, and he's older and he's expensive, and who's trading for a guy coming off an elbow injury at his age?
He won, you won 2 Super Bowls with the guy. There is some loyalty there.
Yeah. And they are human beings. It's not fantasy football.
Right.
I mean, you have a locker room that's played with this dude and won a lot, and they're like, you're going to give me a 3rd-round pick and not him? That's what we're going to try to win with this year?
Yeah.
It's tough.
It is tough. It's again, it's no man's land in football.
Yeah.
When you don't have the franchise quarterback. Doesn't mean you can't still win.
Sure.
But it is more difficult.
I bet if you went even back further, I mean, like, obviously the Steelers past Bradshaw's not much better. It's not better.
Yeah.
Worse. I mean, Steelers post Ben is better than Steelers post Bradshaw.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly.
Yeah. And the Steelers post Bradshaw had a plan.
I mean, they drafted Malone.
They drafted Mark Malone in the 1st round.
In the 1st round, right. Just to sit around on a Super Bowl type team and not do anything.
He had the longest touchdown reception in team
playing
history.
Wide receiver.
Yeah, playing
like
wide
that.
receiver
right.
because he was that kind of athlete.
I wonder those 70 teams though, like Greasy kind of went to Marino. Post Stabler couldn't have been great.
It was actually pretty good.
Stabler would have been good because they had Plunkett and those guys.
You could, I mean, Jim Plunkett was the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
But the thing is, back to your original point,
you could stash a guy and. The Cowboys went to Danny White. Well, Danny White had been on their roster forever.
He was a good backup, right?
And, because you just could.
And the key, back to your original point, though, like, no one's taken Art Shell and Gene Upshaw off the Raiders because Stabler retired.
Right.
Because there's no cap and there's no, you still are.
Those guys,
you were a great team.
They couldn't move. They couldn't go anywhere else.
No, right.
Which is why I didn't even look at that era.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, it happens that the Steelers lost their super Steelers kind of the same time Bradshaw did. But with all respect to Terry, if he gets hurt in 78 or 79 and you stick somebody else in there, Danny White, they're probably a contender.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in the hunt.
They're going to be pretty good.
They're going to be good, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's not like there's not a $100 million Mahomes investment.
They won games with Mike Kruchek.
Yeah. Right. I mean, they were going to be good.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to take a little deeper dive into this defensive tackle position.
Okay.
In this draft today, and we end up talking a lot about the guys at the top of the draft, the Nolans, the Harris, or Grant, I should say, Mason Graham, guys like that. But I want to talk more about some of these secondary guys, and there's a lot to like.
There's a lot to like. There's a lot of options.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like a Tyleek Williams, who
yeah.
Okay,
it wouldn't shock me if he falls more than you think. Just as it's back to that conversation. How many snaps is he truly going to play for you?
Yeah. But
you'd have to have a 2nd-round pick to make it work. I mean, he's not going to fall the 3rd round for the Steelers, but
maybe not.
Yeah,
you just don't know. Josh Farmer's another guy.
Farmer's really interesting.
35-inch arms on him.
I know it's kind of a rarity for that position.
Yeah,
he can get off the ball pretty well too, and he does use that arm length to his advantage. I'd have a hard time passing on him in round 3.
Yeah,
if he's still there.
Alfred Collins is another one.
I'm really warming up to that guy too. He bats down a ton of passes. You watch him. Both the Texas guys are interesting.
Yeah,
I mean they both.
Broughton, the other one.
Yeah, they were stuck behind 2 really good players on a super talented team, but they got dimensions and they are big enough to ride the ride here. I think one of those guys could end up in Pittsburgh. Yeah,
Broughton's another one there that kind of flew under the radar a little bit in a different draft class. You'd be talking about him as a potential 2nd round guy.
Yeah, I tend to think so. And you might give him the 4th.
Right.
You mean right.
Yeah. Cam Jackson out of Florida is another one of these nose tackles. It's just a huge space eater on the inside.
There's some value to that.
Yeah. I mean, can you get a guy like that in the 6th round?
I bet you give him the 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, so those types aren't for every defense. And if I bet we could come up with 8 of them in this draft. The 7th or 8th one's going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't mean the 7th or 8th even best one.
There aren't realistically, how many teams are going to be interested in a true nose tackle type?
Right. Like I think a lot of teams will be interested in Alfred Collins and Kenneth Grant.
Or a Broughton. Someone of that.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, Phillips and Caldwell and Jackson and these nose types, they
Even
may
West,
be a bargain, right? I was hesitant on him, but he's not much of a pass rusher either. Not everyone's going to be in the market for him. I think you'll get those guys around later or two than you thought.
That's the only argument I can come up with against taking Kenneth Grant in the first round.
Yeah, because we do so many mocks. It's wonderful when the 5th round rolls around and it's West or Caldwell. It's like, oh, sign me up. And it's like, we all kind of did that. And I do think Grant could line up at other spots. I also think Collins could. But I don't know if I need 2 330-plus guys in the same draft class.
Yeah.
Got to feed them, too.
Yeah, there is that. But good football players are good football players.
Yeah, right.
And I just want to collect them.
And you're going to be big, physical AFC North, hard to play against. Derrick Henry's in your division. Don't discount it.
Yeah.
I bet they draft a nose.
Yeah. J.J. Pegas, to me, out of Mississippi, is another one that's interesting. He was a tight end early in his career, and then he transferred. He was at Auburn. Transfers to Mississippi.
He's been in for a visit.
Yeah. And they still used him as a short yardage fullback.
I think a lot.
With a lot of success.
I
think he actually touched the ball.
They give him the ball.
Like 19 times or something like that. And he either scored a touchdown or came up with the first down 17 times.
Mm-hmm. So I can't verify this, but I've heard several people bring it up that NFL teams at the Combine wanted him to work out with the running backs too. And he just said, I'll look too bad against those. Like that's a bad career move. But wanted to see him do some of the drills as a fullback. I mean, I'm not saying he's Walter Payton or Eric Dickerson. But
he's still raw as a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
But he's super athletic.
He's really talented.
Yeah.
What are his dimensions? Is he 6'2"?
He's like 6'2", 300.
I thought he was like 288 or something like that. But I mean,
they list him here at the Combine as 6'2.5", 309.
Okay. I mean, the Steelers could use that guy. That's Ogunjobi.
Yeah. I just think that he ran a 5.15. That's
fine.
Yeah. Right. I mean, he for a nose tackle. I
guess he'd be more nose here.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not Hampton.
No, he's not that.
Right.
But with that athleticism,
is he Hargrave?
Could he be Hargrave? That was going to be my question.
Okay. No, he's really interesting.
Yeah.
4th, 5th round?
I think so.
Yeah.
My love for Ty Robinson. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. I
don't think he's going to Pro Bowls, but I think he lasts in the league 10 years and retires with a lot of millions in the bank.
Yeah. Just a good football player.
Yeah.
Jamari Caldwell's another one of these nose tackles that
I'm a fan.
Pretty damn intriguing.
Yeah, he moves well. I mean, he's very physical. A lot of stunts and twists with Harmon and things like that, too, that he can do fine. He's active.
Yeah, and he is a nose tackle.
Body type.
Yeah. Mentioned Broughton. I'm just looking here through some of these guys. Tim Smith out of Alabama, another pure. Like, you're not going to get anything pass rush-wise out of these guys.
Yeah.
But you want them to plug the middle?
I always lump him and Black from Iowa together, too. Just full-grown man.
Yeah, Yaha Black's another one. I can't believe he's not available on the Pro Football Focus
it's so
mock
weird.
drafter.
I'm sure it's an oversight of some sort. But both those guys are – I mean, they can play a little high, but it doesn't always matter because they're just big, strong,
big, powerful.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. First off the bus kind of guys.
Don't want to meet them in a dark alley types. Right.
And honestly, is there that much difference between a guy like that and Jordan Phillips?
Probably not. I think Phillips plays lower, and he was a wrestler, and there probably is more pass rush upside. But these guys are big, heavy-handed, knockback little center guys.
Yeah, if you put them over top of
the Linderbaums,
of the world, they're going to knock him.
Yeah, he's going to be a handful.
He's going to have some issues. Let's put it that way. Jay Toya out of UCLA is another one that
I don't know a ton about him.
He I noticed him at the Combine. He moves pretty well. 6'2", 342.
Wow.
That's a big man.
Yeah, it's a big man.
And,
he's not a super chubbo, though, right?
No, I mean, I just think he's got that pure nose tackle, but the effort is like
strong.
You just see pure effort all the time. Just another guy there that could be, again, maybe he's not your long-term answer as a but a guy that situationally can play the nose for you. That
you get in the 6th round.
Yeah,
that makes a team and is active on game day as a rookie. Maybe.
I mean, you're talking about what did Daniel Jeremiah said? He has 24 defensive tackles in this draft that he has with startable grades.
I think McShay has 30 D linemen in his top 3 rounds, including edge guys. I'm not sure the numbers now I think about it, but something like that. I mean, there's a ton of them.
Yeah. I mean, so you're going to get guys in this particular draft in the 4th round, in the 5th round, even in the 6th round that
will be long-term contributors.
Yeah.
They're going to last in this league and be pretty good careers.
And there's
you got to dip your toes in those waters.
What I see is more of those nose tackle types and not as many of the true defensive end types.
Yeah.
Which is why, when I look at a guy, some of these edge guys or guys who are considered edge, like a Shamar Stewart or like the
Mississippi dude we were talking about. Yeah. Can you manufacture him into a bigger version?
Can I turn Kyle Kennard into a 3-4 defensive end?
Mm-hmm.
I think he has pass rush skills.
Right.
He's 6'4". Now, he was down to 254 at the combine.
Yeah, I think that's not what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to showcase himself as an edge guy. I'm not sure he's the best example.
But he ran a 4.73 at the – I don't know that his best position – I'm not going to put him an outside linebacker.
Not for the Steelers. I mean, he's not going to be in a 2-point stance, dropping the coverage once in a while.
He might be better off being at that 285-pound –
power end, over the tight end type of guy, too.
Yeah. Was it Savion Jones from LSU is another one.
He was really impressive to me at the Senior Bowl, and I don't know why he's not getting more conversation.
6'5", 280.
Yeah. He plays like an edge. He is an edge.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he can do that at the next level. He's not going to run around tackles.
Right. You're not going to ask him to bend the edge.
Right.
But I mean, just those kind of guys
there too.
I think are getting kind of overlooked in the process here. Like, is there a lot of difference between Savion Jones and Vernon Broughton in the grand scheme of things?
Probably not. I mean, I think their style of play is different.
Other than about 15 pounds. One's going to.
If you dedicated yourself to be more Broughton-like over your first year, could you get there?
In the meantime, you're a situational pass rusher that, get in there.
I mean, there's ability there.
Yeah.
It's really an Eagles thing, too. Like, they'll take a D lineman of all shapes and sizes as long as you have great traits.
The traits.
Yeah.
The traits.
It might take you a while. I mean, they took the dude from Houston Christian.
Right.
That was a safety 2 years ago,
Yeah. So, you just have to – it doesn't hurt to look outside the box on some of these guys. Just because they're listed as this doesn't mean that's what –
particularly at that position. I mean, there's a few positions where just give me freaky athletes and coach them up. And maybe 1 out of 2 hits, but they hit pretty big.
Yeah.
And, they're just crazy long arms or great get off or something that's
the key is
great.
For that in particular – you can't be the 6'2" guy. You can't ask a 6'2", 260-pound guy to suddenly, okay, you're going to put on 40 pounds and become. No.
Yeah.
You got to have some length.
You got to have some length.
You got to have what Aaron Smith had. You have to have what Brett Kiesel had.
Yeah, I don't want short, stubby arms, and especially if you're going to run. And again, the Steelers scheme isn't like it used to be, where everyone has to be 6'4".
We're not two-gapping.
Right. But it's still, they want length and they want Cam Hayward-looking dudes, Tuitt-looking dudes.
And those guys in particular, those edge guys, look more like Hayward or Stephon Tuitt.
I mean,
and I think the arm length is a big part of it.
What did Cam weigh as a draftee?
He was like 295.
But I bet he looks different now than he does then.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, grayer, obviously. But I mean, more man strength, thicker, just as the way his body's composed.
Yeah.
I bet we'd look at him and be like, boy, he looks kind of skinny, compared to the version we know now.
Oh, his shoulders are bigger.
Yeah.
He's just a much bigger, thicker guy.
Most people don't get the opportunity to grow that long into the league.
He probably also does not weigh 295 anymore.
Probably not. Not. There's a lot of muscle and thickness and mass on that body.
Yeah, and that's just the natural progression. I mean, remember when the Steelers?
I mean, all of us had weight, dude.
He had just turned 21 when the Steelers had drafted him.
I knew he was young, and I thought he was, he was kind of a tweener at the time too. That they were more of a 3-4 team then.
Yeah,
and I think that he wasn't for everyone because he wasn't an edge bender.
And that's why he went, fell to where he did.
Yeah.
There are more teams looking for that now than there used to be.
Absolutely.
At the same time, you can still find those guys, and I think
your point's a good one. You can maybe manufacture one.
Yeah, I think arm length's such a big part of it.
I think it's absolutely huge. Absolutely. I mean, if you can bend and change direction, you got traits, including length. That's a good start.
Yeah, but the length to me is one of the key components, because they don't want your nose tackle can have shorter arms. I don't think that your ends in a 3-4 can have short arms.
No, I don't either. And I don't think they want him in being 6'2" or any of that kind of stuff, too.
Yeah.
Now, in nickel and dime, sure. But you still want the space eaters and the way that they do their pass rush and stunts and things like that, too. A lot of the length is important.
Yeah.
How many times do you see Cam lock guys out,
right.
with his length,
he just,
power. Right.
Boom, and it's once that arm's locked, it's
yeah.
You're not breaking it. I don't care if it's Quentin Nelson. He's getting walked back to the quarterback.
Right. And he's obviously the creme de la creme, but I think that's exactly what they're looking for.
But that's what when they had he and Tuitt.
It's a real handful.
Yeah.
I mean, can Nolan be one of those guys? Maybe. I mean, he's one of the few that I'd say maybe. I mean, that's a lofty praise.
Yeah. I just think those guys are tougher to find than the nose tackle types.
100%.
Much as I love Grant.
That's the only negative, because the rest of your draft doesn't go quite as well. There's an argument for Nolan over Grant. I don't think there's an argument for Harmon over Grant.
Yeah.
I have more questions about Harmon.
Although I wouldn't have a problem with Harmon being.
Me neither. I think he's disruptive, and there's a lot to work with there, too.
Yeah, and he's got the 35-inch arms.
He's coming into his own, too. He's a much better player now than he was at Michigan State.
Yeah.
And, he does have the length. Right. I think his lower body could stand to get stronger and thicker, but it will.
It will.
I'm sure it will, right,
Yeah, you just put him on a different weight program. And, okay, you got to build your base strength. All right, this is fine up here.
Yeah.
Now we got to work on the below that. It's like bodybuilders. Don't forget the legs.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to work with.
The muscles
there,
up top are all nice. That's all well and good, but you also flex your calves.
And you don't need him to be a true starter, every down player in 2025. Right.
Yeah.
You wouldn't.
And welcome back to the Drive, the tomb, the crypt. On the Justin Miller hotline, we have Bob Labriola, the Dean of Doom, the Lord of Living in His Fears. How you doing, Labs?
That's more Crypt Keeper. But, hey, I'll tell you what. I was prepared for you guys that if you didn't have music, I was going to give you a hard time about it.
Justin's on it. That was news to me.
Yeah. Kudos to Justin, because I know he's the one who did all the work.
As usual.
So, Bob, the competition committee today, in addition to recommending that this is what the league announced today, in addition to recommending changes or adjustments, tweaks to the kickoff rule, which is going to stay in place, they want that to be a permanent thing. Kind of knew that was going to happen. They want to add some checks and balances to the officiating crews. And
I didn't hear that.
They want to make replay. They've recommended expanding replay system to allow the overturning of certain penalties called based on specific objective aspects of the play, which would include hits on defenseless player, face mask, horse collar tackles, tripping or running into the kicker, things like that. So they're not going to call them from the up above, but if it's called and it wasn't that, replay would have the ability to overturn that call. Yay or nay on that for you, Bob?
Well, that sounds to me a little bit like what replay assist was supposed to be last year.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's nice in theory, but again, we continue. The league continues to put a Band-Aid on the flesh wound, and again, it just seems more layers of the same kind of thing that brought us replay and all the problems associated with that. I mean, whatever. I guess maybe if someone would want to look at it optimistically and praise the league for trying to, trying to get it right, okay. But, I truly believe that the way to do it is better officials, and eliminate the replay and all of that stuff, because that just makes, in my opinion, officials tentative. A lot of times they either call things or don't call things because they know that if they call them or don't call them a certain way, replay will be there automatically to back them up. And, again, I've said this on your show. I believe this for a long time. Treat officials like players in this sense. You draft them, quote unquote, young, teach them, develop them, and then when they get to 30, maybe their early 30s, then they're too old. Get somebody else, get a new batch in. And that's kind of the way I see it. But hey, it's I don't know. I'm just skeptical that this is really going to fix the problem. Again, I just think that they continue to try and, here's another thing too. Teams and coaches have to get it through their heads that there are going to be mistakes. Coaches make mistakes, players make mistakes, officials can make mistakes, overcome it, and move on. This idea that every call has to be correct, it's not real. It's just not.
Well, what I would like to see, though, Bob, is a little more openness in terms of some of these things. Like, we have press conferences, the coaches have to answer for their mistakes.
Why'd you go for it on fourth down?
Players have to answer when they make a mistake. But you have to go with bended knee and ask, sir, might we talk to you about this mistake that was made, or what were you thinking on this particular thing? And then you get the next day, even if you don't get the official review of what happened, you get the talking heads who go on their shows the next day and say, well, they made the right call. When everybody looking at it,
let alone if a coach or player questions them, then they get fined.
And then the coach and player gets fined, but these guys just have carte blanche to just do whatever they want, and nobody ever gets a chance to say, what were you thinking on that? Or what was the thought process there? Unless, again, you get a pool reporter, and nobody wants to do that necessarily, and you have to request it, and then they have to acquiesce to said request, and it's just, I think that process needs to be changed a little bit. And just, okay, here were the 5 calls during the game that were controversial. I'm going to talk about all 5 of them, and this is what we were thinking. I don't even care if they take any questions.
Mm-hmm. You're not saying put them at the podium after every game or anything. But.
Give me an explanation of why that call was made.
Well, my response to that is good luck with that.
Well, I know. It's a pie in the sky thing. It's not going to happen.
Right. Never going to happen. And, the league's association, I'll use that word, with gambling now, you almost can't do that. For example, like I was watching some NCAA basketball, this tournament, since it began a week ago tomorrow. And you're watching the telecast, and they introduced the players and the coaches, and then they would put up, and they show them on camera. Then they would mention the officials. Never showed you their faces while they were listing their names. And, I'm not saying that they should have. I'm saying my opinion is they can't. You can't expose those people. I don't think.
Well, here's the thing, though. Everybody knows who the referees are, who the heads of every crew are. That's no secret. I mean, these guys are on TV.
You may not know what they look like.
They're on TV, though, constantly, because every time there's a call, holding, right. And you know who these guys are. You know what Ron Torbert looks like.
That's Ed Hockley.
But he doesn't. He's not the guy who necessarily made the call.
I understand that, but he's part of the process of why the call. Trust me, as you well know, they have a conference pretty much after every call.
But, Labs, are you insinuating like the anonymity is so their car doesn't blow up afterwards, or that, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, yeah, you don't think that there would be wackos who lost money on a bet?
Exactly, right.
You know,
kids can't go to school the next day, or
Right, yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, so I just, the thing to me is there should be some acceptance, and the TV networks are complicit as well.
They are.
They're absolutely complicit as well.
They put those guys on. They pay these guys millions of dollars to come on there and talk about every single call that's made.
Well, not only that, though. I mean, 50 angles in super slow motion.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, if you're going to talk about officiating, it should run in real time. Now tell me what it is.
Right. The human's not going to keep up with the 50 angles. Right.
Well, not only that.
The official has one angle with what you call it. Not
frame by frame analysis of whether a foot is in bounds or not, or, is the toe touching the white line, or did the heel hit the black before it got to the white? I mean, they can do that frame by frame, and again, that's not how it's originally adjudicated, and so it just seems the way the game has evolved in terms of the complexity of it, the speed of it. The rules, I mean, how can anybody even know all those rules, let alone be able to interpret them in game speed, split second, and be right all the time? It's just not realistic. And I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I know that, for example, in baseball, or even NBA or college basketball, you don't get a chance to interview those guys after every game or have them speak every game.
Yeah, the umpire doesn't talk to the media, right? I mean,
no.
Why'd you call this a strike? Why'd you call this a ball? Or
Yeah, and I mean balls and strikes.
There's no arguing balls and strikes. Yeah. That's the first thing when I umpire and we're having our home plate meeting. I'm like, look, you want to come out and ask about a ruling on something, call timeout, come on out and ask. As long as you're not screaming and yelling at me, you're fine. You want to start arguing balls and strikes, you're not going to be here very long.
We're going to be here forever, right? Yeah.
You're not going to be. Well, I'll be here, but you won't be there. I will not tolerate that. I've got a much better angle on this than you do coaching
in
down
the
at third
dugout
base.
with Johnny pulling on your leg. Yeah.
And now, with baseball, you can just do the ABS.
Yeah.
And it's like the tennis thing. Balls are in or out. They show it to you right away. There's no such possibility for that mechanism being put into practice in the NFL, though. I don't see how that could be, because the home plate is static. The strike zone may change a little bit by individual batter, but home plate is static. So even trying to use AI or chips in the ball or whatever, for first downs, I mean that's constantly moving. You don't have a situation where the line to gain is always the same line. Okay, now let's try and figure out, did the ball cross that line? Was the knee down first? Those kind of things, because the line's constantly moving too. So I'll admit it, I'm way not smart enough to figure out how that could even work, or how you would even try to write, the software for that, what that's going to cost, and can you not afford to, but based on the different configurations of the stadiums and how many games are on at the same time and how many games are being played per weekend, is it even feasible? So that's why, I believe that you got to try and do a better job of originally picking people, and the thought process or the hope that technology is going to fix all this. I think technology makes it worse.
Labs, I love what you said earlier. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I love how you phrase it like we should talk about refs like players. I mean, maybe they're not a draft, but I mean, certainly when you get late into your 30s, into your 40s, you're probably not as sharp at your job, and it's a very difficult thing to see, move, all those type of things, or reevaluate them every year, But one thing I've been asked a lot, and I don't know if you have any opinion on. This guy thinks he can run a 6-second 40, by the way. Anyway, one thing I don't have a strong opinion on is I get asked it all the time. Should refs be full-time? And I'm like, I guess they'd be better at their job, but you'd lose some good ones that have a insurance company on the side. And really, what would a full-time ref do at Wednesday at 11 a.m.? You know what I mean?
Week 14.
Let alone in the offseason.
Right. I mean, I don't understand what you gain by making them full-time.
And, another thing that I just don't understand is, and this is a procedural thing, and it's been like this as long as, I've been doing this, the notion that ball spotting should be done by the same guys who start to play at the line of scrimmage.
Right.
Who thought that was a good idea?
Mm-hmm. 20 yards downfield,
or
he comes running in from 40 yards away to spot the football.
Guesses. He's guessing.
I still laugh at the change, though. My grandkids are going to laugh that they ran out with this 10-yard chain. Two dudes do that all day. I think that's still insane to me.
There is some charm to it, though.
Sure.
But again, yes, it's ridiculous. But as I said, I just to me the notion that more technology is going to solve it to me is the exact opposite of the reality.
Well, they could fix that whole chain thing by just saying that. I mean, you've got yard markers on the field, so every time you pass a yard marker, you get a new first down. And every time you get a 10-yard marker, I should say.
Oh, okay.
Just get rid of that altogether.
Bring out the index cards and all the nonsense.
Even if you start your drive at the 32, you got to get to the 40 to get a new first down, and then from there you got to get to the 50, and then from the 50 back to the 40.
Oh, I see what you're saying, over the white lines. Okay. Yeah, I don't want 1st and 6.
So you're changing it from 1st and 10 to 1st and whatever.
You get possession at the 24, you got 1st and 6 to start your first drive.
I don't like it at all.
Leave the game the way it is.
It was just something I just thought of it right now as we're sitting here. It was the first time that.
So like Cordero Patterson should go out at the 24-yard line instead of the 25-yard line.
Why would you do that? Because you're still getting a first down at the 30.
It'd be 1st and 6 for your offense.
Instead of 1st and 5?
It'd be 1st and 10 because you get to a white line.
No, every 10
only
yards.
10.
Every 10.
Okay. Well, the 29, not the 30.
You'd still want to get to the 30.
No, I don't like that idea. I don't think that's a solution.
I'm just spitballing, man. We're throwing ideas around here. Mm-hmm. That's all.
Yeah, and anybody who ever told you there's no such thing as a bad idea was lying to you.
That's what we do here, Bob. We throw ideas out there.
We have a lot of time to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, that's what I said. You have too many hours of talk shows to do.
So Bob, Russell Wilson signs with the New York Football Giants yesterday, ending his 1-year tenure here. Looks like the Steelers will get a compensatory pick in return for that when those are announced next year. Your thoughts on the 1-year tenure of Russell Wilson as the Steelers starting quarterback?
Well, I mean, if the Steelers, let me say it this way: if the Steelers do end up signing a veteran to add to the depth chart at the top of the depth chart,
any names in mind?
Here's my suggestion: no sled pushing.
Yeah, that would be
training camp.
There you go.
Probably a good idea. Leave that to us professionals. We'll be pushing the sleds.
Yeah.
Because that just kind of muddled the whole thing. I mean, Russell Wilson was signed, brought to Pittsburgh to be the starting quarterback. The whole narrative that Justin Fields, and I like Justin Fields, I do. I think he handled himself well throughout his time in Pittsburgh. But the whole notion that he was benched
it makes
is incorrect.
Yeah. It's incorrect.
It's just not correct.
Yeah. He wasn't treated fairly.
Backup.
He was benched.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
He was the backup, and when the starter was healthy, the starter got the job. It's no different than Terry Bradshaw and Mike Kruzek in 1976.
If Wilson never pushes that sled and injures his calf on the second play of Week 1, nobody calls it a benching. If
he
Wilson
never even played in Week 1.
That's what. No, I mean, if he never pushes that sled and he is the Week 1 starter and instead injures himself the second play of the game, we'd all be like, "Oh, we're just holding down the fort for Wilson," as opposed to Fields got benched.
Or if some people who fall in love with running quarterbacks and think that is the way, and I'm talking about fans, media, and think that that's the way to win a championship, which has never been the case in modern football. I just the whole Justin Fields' qualities that he exhibited during his 6 starts, I thought were way exaggerated.
Mm-hmm.
I almost said over-exaggerated, but I know Dale would go ding, ding, ding.
No, you two editors would be all over that.
Yeah. That's like re-aggravating an injury.
Yeah.
But his history is as a quarterback in the NFL is that he had a problem diagnosing or figuring out what the defense was doing and where that meant he should go with the ball, and to make that decision in an anticipatory way, and as they say, throw the receiver open. Because if you wait for the receiver to be open and then throw it,
too late.
Right, too late, especially if you're trying to make your money over the middle. So,
got to still win from the pocket.
Right. Going back to Russell Wilson, I think one of the things that ended up hurting him here was that he was a little bit too much of a gambler. Russell Wilson liked to, go for it, attack down the field, and that's an admirable quality for a quarterback. I'm sure that helped him in his time in Seattle when he won a Super Bowl and took the team to a second one. But a team's tolerance for that kind of stuff grows based on your time together. Having the ability to audible with the full menu at your disposal is something that I believe, in the reality of the NFL, is something the quarterback has to earn with that coach, with that coordinator, with that team's management. Sure, Ben Roethlisberger could do that, but do you think he was doing that when he was a rookie? Or even in 2006, 07? I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And so all the chafing about he doesn't get the chance to audible, well, maybe that there was some basis for that or some history there that, and it was, Russell Wilson wasn't, and I don't know where this information came from, so I'm just repeating it. I don't even know if it's true. But Russell Wilson was not allowed to audible during the December 1st game against Cincinnati where the Steelers scored 44 points. Well, maybe that game, instead of showing people why it was a good thing that they weren't letting him do that, because as he was following the program, so to speak, the offense had a pretty good game. Plus the Bengals defense stunk. So, but that's always kind of
helpful, yeah.
Brushed off to the back. So anyway, my point is that, Russell Wilson was a first-year Steelers quarterback, and I think in his mind, he was a 12-year veteran Steelers quarterback. He was maybe a 12 or 13-year NFL veteran quarterback, but what you did in Seattle in 20 whatever year they won the Super Bowl doesn't carry any weight for me now in 2024. That doesn't carry any weight. It doesn't allow me or me as the team to extend to you the same leeway and trust instantly that you developed, based on what you had done over the course of time. It's unfortunate, but I just think that to me, the worst part of it was that he didn't get to start the season, and then circumstances as they existed and the way the season ended. I don't know that it would have been healthy for anyone to run that one back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our guest has been Bob Labriola, the editor of Steelers Digest and Steelers.com, the Dean of Doom, the Lord of Living in His Fears. Labs, we appreciate your time as always. We are back. I'm Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, the owner of his very own hot dog roller.
Yeah, we were saying it's opening day. I should have busted out the hot dog roller.
Anyways, let's
brought
get
him
back
into the drive. Have it sitting right here, just spinning.
Let's get back to the Twitter questions here before we run out of time. RJ Poirier asks, who are your top 3 or third round or later running backs, assuming the Steelers take one in the third round as we sit here with today's current picks?
I'm not going to put Johnson in that mix or the Ohio State guys.
I don't know if they make it that far to 83.
Scatterbo Martinez come to mind.
Yeah. Jordan James is a guy that has some, even though he didn't run super
he
well.
tested poor, but I like this
He's
tape.
a good player.
There's so many of those backs, like Kyron Williams, that test poor, they're good players.
Jarquez Hunter's a good player.
Yeah. I still have an eye on Tootin and Sampson. Just because of their explosiveness.
Yeah.
Teach them not to fumble, especially Tootin. Martinez would be my short answer, I think.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, too.
I think he'd be a really good Steeler. Fourth round.
Yeah. Cola Chris 76 asks, if Nolan Harmon and Grant are all drafted by the time the Steelers pick at 21, would you pivot to cornerback or look to trade down towards the end of the first round and possibly take one of the Ohio State running backs?
That'd be a nightmare scenario for me.
Well, if for all 3 of those guys to go earlier, somebody else is falling that you would think somebody would want to come up and get. Will Johnson still there, or
an edge rusher,
Jody Barron, or edge rushers,
somebody like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's real easy to. We don't have much time, but it's real easy. We'll trade down. I don't know who's trading up necessarily, but there would be somebody odd there.
Yeah,
Loveland or Warren or they'd be like, okay, I
could use that.
Yeah. Barron,
Andrew Kwiatkowski asked, if the Steelers don't draft a defensive lineman in round 1, what position do you think is most likely? Running back.
Hampton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be the name. If it was not even position, if they said, what name would you say? I would say Hampton.
Yeah.
Barron?
Maybe Barron.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
bet they have a high grade on him.
Right, yeah, there's a lot to like.
Yeah.
Steeler Chick Pittsburgh, PGH asks, do you know why the Steelers are still waiting for Aaron Rodgers and why Rodgers won't make his decision? Is Mason Rudolph starter material?
Well, they have more information on this situation than we do.
If anybody knows what's going through the mind of Aaron Rodgers,
right,
please inform the rest of the world because nobody knows.
The Steelers might.
I'm sure they
know more than we do.
Russell Wilson, Russell Wilson didn't wait all this time on the Steelers to then suddenly this week go, okay, I'm going to go sign with the Giants.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody told him something.
I think there's this crazy misconception that Rodgers is holding the strings up here and he's just dangling the Steelers along for the ride, and they have no thoughts or any input in this situation. I don't think that's the case.
He didn't fly across the country, spend 6 hours here, and then fly back across the country if he wasn't intent on playing football.
And if something crazy, like he went to the Vikings, I don't think the Steelers got played or anything. They're on top of the situation.
Chris Maxwell asked, Tomlin motto, that he would rather have volunteers instead of hostages. The Steelers are playing the comp game. Hypothetical, if Pickens comes in disgruntled, does Tomlin change his stance? And do you guys think that players take advantage of this if they want out?
I think it can be a slippery slope in sports in general. when someone's like, I'm not happy here, I want to trade, and then the guy next to him's like, I'm not saying the Steelers, this organization stinks, I want to trade too.
I think you draw the line when Mike Tomlin says that. Think about who he has said that about over the years.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been starters.
Right.
They've been depth pieces, backup guys, Melvin Ingram.
It wasn't LeGarrette Blount.
LeGarrette Blount. Like these are not foundational guys. These are
the world's still spinning.
These are
without
bench
them,
players.
Right.
Even James Harrison at the end.
Right.
Like these are guys
that
who
wasn't James
weren't,
after defensive MVP.
Yeah, these weren't starting players. So you have different. You say we'd rather have volunteers instead of hostages, but you're talking about different.
He didn't say about AB.
No,
when he was the
right.
first pick in fantasy drafts.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, Jimmy Johnson said it best. I mean,
you have different rules for different guys.
Michael Irvin can be late to the meeting, but the 53rd guy on the roster can't be.
Who was the Pitt running back who fell asleep in the meeting and they cut him immediately?
It wasn't Tony Dorsett.
It wasn't Tony Dorsett. You're right. That was kind of my point.
Yeah.
Who do you want the Steelers to take at quarterback next year if they don't take one this year?
I have no idea.
I have no idea, Jagersburg.
Right.
There's a whole lot of football to be played next year.
I know LSU has Nussmeier, and Penn State's got a guy. I don't like the
Penn State quarterback at all.
I've hardly watched them. But yeah. I'm not that far ahead though.
Archie Wilson asks, when you look at the roster outside of Watt, Hayward, and Fitzpatrick, who are the potential cornerstones of the franchise in your mind? Joey Porter Jr. comes to mind.
Fautanu really comes to mind.
Fautanu comes to mind.
Frazier's already there.
Yeah. You got some guys. They didn't trade for DK Metcalf and pay him.
He still counts, even
a
though
lot
he's
of
older
money
than those guys.
He's still only 27. Like you're going to get 3 or 4 years out of.
You get Pickens going down the right road, and everybody's there's no question he could be that guy.
Yeah.
Benton.
Yeah.
I mean, this time next year we might be like, oh, Benton's one of those guys.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we're projecting a little, but yeah.
And J.P. Berg.
Even like a Freiermuth still counts.
Yeah, I don't know if he's a franchise cornerstone, but he's a good football player.
Yeah, I mean, he's a building block.
Yeah. Obviously, on whether Rodgers signs, but say he does, I've been seeing heavy offensive line, defensive line. I still think with this running back heavy class, it's needed to take or to trade back and gain capital and take one of these running backs with the first 3 picks, maybe double dip later on. Thoughts? Well, we've done that quite a bit when we've done our mock drafts.
Where this is coming from is when I really went on this 4 lineman kick, I posted a mock draft that didn't have a running back. Now, we've done 8,000 mock drafts, and we always take a running back. And my preface was sign J.K. Dobbins right now, and I did it on purpose because the world would keep spinning if you missed out. But 99 out of 100 times, they're going to take a running back.
I think you just wait. First of all, if you sign J.K. Dobbins now that affects your comp formula.
Yeah. You might have a...
You'd wait until after the draft, and there's going to be guys available.
Then say that it could be Nick Chubb, it could be Dobbins, it could be anyone.
There'll be guys cut
back.
after the
after
the draft when somebody we didn't expect to take a running back here,
Mm-hmm.
but here he is, and I don't need Miles Sanders anymore.
And I got a ton of blowback. Like, why would you sign J.K. Dobbins? He's injury prone. I'm like, he would cost nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, you could cut him before camp.
I think he played for the Chargers last year for like $3 million.
Right, that's a
he's
deal
not going to get that
sign.
much more than that.
He might give him
because of the injury history.
Exactly, and he was good. If you get 8 games out of him, fine. I mean, these aren't even like real investments.
Yeah, the Ole Miss Pro Day.
Oh yeah,
took place, and Andy Weidel was there, taking a look at all. Here's the thing about it. Well, Andy Weidel was on hand looking at Jackson Dart. Maybe he was checking out Walter Nolan as well.
And the receiver in the corner. And I mean, they're loaded,
guys,
right?
Yeah.
They're loaded. You're crazy if you're not there. I mean, you have to have some representation at Ole Miss right now.
It's the same thing when the Steelers.
It happens every time.
It's reported that the Steelers took Jalen Milroe out to dinner before the Alabama Pro Day. Well, guess what? They took about 8 guys.
Yeah, they also have other players at Bama still.
It wasn't just Jalen Milroe.
Right.
They never take just one guy to dinner.
I got this a bunch, too. Like, why would the Steelers be so into Malachi Starks at Georgia's Pro Day? I'm like, they have other guys, too. Have you paid any attention to the Georgia program? They're going to have 4 offensive linemen drafted and maybe 4 defensive linemen drafted.
Yeah.
They're not first rounders, but you'd still like to
They're
hang
dudes,
out with them.
yeah.
Right. They still got some talent there.
And
it happens all the time.
And one of the things that Mike Tomlin consistently says over the years is like, he goes to these pro days. Maybe you don't draft that guy, but he's going to be a free agent in a few years,
or
potentially.
You're playing against him.
Or you're playing against him.
Right.
But he may be a free agent in a couple of years, and you get the opportunity. They didn't draft Patrick Queen straight out of college.
Sure.
But they got it when he became a free agent.
I remember explaining this sort of recently on here. I mean, even if you would go, I assume it's the same in pretty much every building. You pull up the scouting report for Queen or whoever.
Yeah.
Well, it starts with his LSU, and you just add to it. And someone adds another layer every year. And it doesn't mean if the organization loved them here, they're going to love them 4 years later. But it's a jumping off point. You do all that background on them. If there was red flags then, you want to check them out now. And guys get cut all the time. I mean, it's just background on all these guys.
It's just part of the process that you go through.
Speaking of which, and we've brought this up on the air, so I'm not afraid to avoid it. But Walter Nolan's, quote, off the field stuff. I know you've done searches for it. There's no arrests. There's not that anyone knows about.
Somebody on our message board today said some website out there is reporting there was an incident at Texas A&M before he left.
This is what I heard the incident was he was warning recruits that A&M promises NIL money and you don't get it. So if that's his off the field issue, that's a check in the positive column for me. Look out for your buds. I've never met the dude. I know nothing about.
You know who had massive
it's like so
off
crazy
the field red flags? The Cowboys outside linebacker
Parsons.
Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
Micah Parsons punched a teammate in the face.
Right. I mean, Warren Sapp fell. Randy Moss fell.
Guys fall.
They actually had real things.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it was like marijuana, which we laugh at now, but that was still illegal at the time. Right.
I'm not bumping a guy down because,
it's not like he beat up a grandma.
The Texas A&M coaches where he transferred from are saying bad things about him.
Right. Which I kind of brought up another whole conversation for me, too, is all these transfers. Is the old school going to speak well of you?
Somebody's going to be unhappy.
Right.
You're the spurned lover.
There's no issues that I'm aware of with Jordan Addison. But he left Pitt, and people around here got sad and mad about it. He went to USC, which I totally understood. But might someone in the Pitt building be like,
if I went back and talked to your girlfriends who are not your wife,
right,
would they all say glowing things about Matt Williamson?
Probably.
All right,
boy, I miss that
maybe
guy.
Maybe you're the outlier.
Right. The one that got away.
That's the,
But no, I wonder how these transfer things change the scouting world, too.
Yeah, I mean.
In some ways, it's good. Like, I can see, what did Bo Nix do wrong at Auburn? And, why did he become a better player at Oregon? Okay.
And that one's even a different situation because he spent 4 years at Auburn and was a grad transfer.
That is a little bit different, too.
As opposed to, say, Ward.
Or like Harmon.
Ward's
year
another one, is at 4 different schools. And do they love him at every school?
Right.
I don't know.
Shuck or any of these dudes. They've been around a lot. Or Harmon had no ill will against Michigan State, but then he goes to Oregon and blows up. Was it just a different scheme or position coach? Or does A&M not allow your guys to get sacks?
Let's dig into that a little bit because so often – and it goes back to what we just talked about with Mike Tomlin talking to these guys. And scheme fit for players is so instrumental in how they develop and what kind of player they become, as is opportunity.
Absolutely.
Scheme and opportunity are the two biggest factors in whether a guy is a good player. How many times over the years have we seen a player leave the Steelers in free agency and not be the same player that he was when he was here?
Especially receivers.
Right.
In particular, right. Everyone knows I have great respect for Greg Cosell, a friend of the show. And he's the podcast I've listened to him, he's gone out of his way this offseason like crazy. Team and scheme. Well, if team and scheme work out, he could be this. Well, if he goes wrong team and scheme,
that's to me was why Nix with the Broncos
was perfect.
Made so much sense.
Yeah.
That was the kind of quarterback. They wanted a Drew Brees like get the ball out quickly, a lot of sideways
Peyton knew exactly
passes.
what he wanted, right? I mean,
that was Nick's.
That's a feather in Peyton's cap. You know, this is what we're looking for. I see it in this guy. I'll take him. You know, I mean, he's a fit for me.
But if Michael Penix goes to Denver,
right,
or Jaden Daniels,
or if Nix goes to Carolina, or right,
or any of those guys change places, even Drake May, do they have the same amount of success that Nix did? Probably, it looks different.
Probably not. Way different. Especially a quarterback.
If Nix goes to New England, is anybody talking about him? Well, Drake May's pretty good.
Yeah.
Would they be saying, "Oh, Bo Nix, he's really good"? No, probably not.
So, I heard another interesting conversation. It was a Shamar Stewart conversation, and it wasn't A&M centric, and it really wasn't even Stewart centric. But they had two guys on. One of them saying, "Draft Stewart, he's underrated." The other one was saying, "Don't draft Stewart, he doesn't make any plays." And both are sort of true. But what I thought was really interesting about DNs and sacks is the guy that was talking on Stewart's behalf was saying, there's so many RPOs that half the time these coaches don't even tell them to rush the passer. They just wait there and run out to the flat or go attack the bubble screen. Like if you're playing against Luther Burden and you're the D end on that side, why do I even rush the passer?
Yeah.
I mean,
the ball's coming out.
Right,
he's going to catch a screen, a bubble screen, and then I got to go tackle him.
Because it's a different game. I mean, sometimes, pass rush production in particular is like, I really only got 100 true pass rush snaps to pass protect or pass rush. It's true for the tackles, too.
It's why some of those spread running backs are so tough to evaluate. Everything that they run.
The whole wide side of the field. I mean, the Dree Archers of the world. I mean, I remember everyone being infatuated with those type of players. Well, we'll just get them in space like we did in college. Well, there's not much space.
Yeah, there's not as much space. And by the way, everybody on the other side of the ball is pretty fast.
A lot faster and better at getting off blocks and smarter and take better angles. And you don't have this insane wide side of the field just to pitch it to your fast guy like it's, my first grade flag football team.
Yeah. So, scheme and fit, playing time availability.
Yeah, that too. Right.
Huge.
And
that's why, to me, a lot of times when you look at some of these teams, they really hit on their draft this year. Like the Rams, for example, 2 years ago, they hit on all these draft picks. Yeah, because they had all these holes in their defense.
When it was Donald and nobody else.
To play.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you're playing, if I'm an inside linebacker or a middle linebacker, and I start for this defense, I'm going to rack up a bunch of tackles.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll probably make plenty of mistakes too.
Yeah.
And the Rams are a smart organization. They probably looked at it, and I'd have to go back and look at the draft classes, but they have gotten a lot out of the last two, including Fisk and Verse and those guys. But maybe they took dudes that were a little older, that were a little more pro-ready. Right. We don't need you to be a guy for us.
We're not developing you. We want you to come in and play now.
You're a linebacker. Yeah. We don't have any linebackers. So you're the most mature guy in the draft. We want to take you in the third round,
Yeah, so there's a lot of that
it's
kind
knowing
of
your team, too.
It is, and hey, I mean, that's what smart teams do. I'm not ripping the Rams
for
that situation.
But it's a marriage of college and pro scouting departments married with the coaching staff, too. You know, and knowing what you need,
Yeah, but just the idea that they're having dinner with this guy, they're bringing that guy. Right. You get 30 visits. You get 30 guys that can come in and visit. And at this point, the Steelers have had about 7.
Yeah.
So over the next,
it's going to pick up
the next 3 weeks. Once the pro days are done, once the owners' meetings are over, you're going to start seeing things happening every day. With the Steelers have this guy in, Steelers have that guy in. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily interested in that guy. There's some interest.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's medical.
A lot of times it's medical, or a lot of times it's, I need to ask that guy 2 more questions. Or, for example, if you have Shamar Stewart in, well, what were they asking you to do on these pass rush snaps?
We couldn't, in the 15 minutes we had at the combine, we couldn't get in deep into this. And now we want to find out.
I talked to someone at the school, but it's still kind of a vague answer, and I want to hear it from you. Show me these 5 plays and tell me what you're supposed to do. Or let me get my hands on your knee that's not great. Or Campbell, let me measure your arms. I'm not going to trust everybody. Right?
There was a reason why you didn't work out at the combine.
Right.
Now I want to see, is that hamstring better? Is that foot issue that you had?
Somebody like that. There's a lot of those dudes. And there's still another medical recheck in Indy.
Yeah. One of the things that drives me nuts about the visits is that some people call them top 30 visits. They're not top 30 visits. You 30. Get 30 visits. They're pre-draft visitors.
They could be whatever you want. Right?
Every time I tweet this out, you always notice if you follow me on Twitter, I call them pre-draft visitors.
Mm-hmm.
They're not top 30. These aren't. If you look at where these guys
to do with if they're
where they're
ranked.
ranked.
Right. Yeah.
If you look at the level of guys that they bring in, they're all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
First rounders, second rounders, third rounders, seventh rounders, guys who might be undrafted.
And then you could add locals for free.
Locals are free.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not top 30 visits. They're showing some kind of interest, or there's some kind of medical there where they just want to know the guy a little bit better.
Like, it wouldn't shock me. You just mentioned Andy was in Ole Miss. Good. And by all means, he's paying attention to every throw Jackson Dart makes. Wouldn't surprise me one bit if Jackson Dart's one of those 30 visits.
Well, he is. That's what I'm saying. He's scheduled,
is he
he's scheduled to come in next
schedule.
month.
As I said, don't.
The other
that
thing
doesn't
is,
mean that he's
just because
not
a guy,
getting past 21.
Just because a guy is scheduled to come in doesn't mean he actually makes it.
That's happened
Stuff
before,
happens. Too. There were supposed to be
a lot of people want Jackson Dart to visit. It's hard to get on a plane 30 times.
A few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, when the Steelers were starting their visits, the day they had Shuck in, they were supposed to have 3 guys in. Now, I never did find out who the third guy was, or 4 guys they were supposed to have.
So I think they had 3 that day.
They had 3 that day. They were supposed to be 4. The 4th guy had a flight issue and couldn't come in that day.
Happens. Right. I mean, there's
maybe they
reschedule
that.
Right.
Maybe they're not able to reschedule that.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of people want to talk to these guys.
Imagine if you were like Jalen Carter, that everyone knew his issues, and if I was all 32 teams, I'd want to bring him in. But is he going to visit the Chiefs? I mean, the chances I fall to 30 or 31 or 32 are probably slim, but maybe the league hates me that much that I better, but you can't get on 32 flights.
No, it's impossible. There's only, 35 days in which to do it, because they usually don't bring guys in on the weekend.
Yeah. And by the way, I'd like to work out and stay in shape and do my
It's
stuff that I
flying
want to do. Right.
around the country doesn't really help you stay in football shape.
Steelers football happens here. The Pittsburgh Steelers Audio Network.